Hi, I'm Chris Glass, and I'm extremely nervous. I don't talk in front of people, maybe not as nervous as if I was going through the Latitude Society tunnel of carpet, but really close. So I'm probably gonna flop sweat, and I might hang on to this and look at my stuff a lot, but anyway, just super happy to be here. Super nervous. So anyway, I think a little backstory might be in order. I am a designer. And I started a long time ago, back in about '96, making CD-ROMs. And I've kind of prided myself through the years, wherever I have a deficit, I kind of work backwards from it and make things by hand. For instance, if I don't know how to 3D model, I know how to use an X-Acto. I moved on from CD-ROMs and started making websites for a while. And that served me well, and I really enjoyed it, and I actually still do it. After that, I started a t-shirt company with friends in 2006. And we just had 7 products, and we made this website by hand. It's actually cut paper and things like that. But we made t-shirts because I was getting tired of making websites that just would expire or turn into something else, and I just wanted to make something and commit it with ink to a surface. I've been lucky to work on an emblem for recovery for the current administration. That was just kind of a crazy fast project. I've made logos, some big, some small, sometimes all the way down to a podcast. I've worked for interfaces for far out things. This was like 10 years ago for what would Amazon look like in the future? So this was before tablets. And I try to make work that is sturdy and can kind of hold up over time. I just wrapped up finishing a book for an anthology of stories in Cincinnati, my hometown. Another thing I just finished up was these jerseys for a group of Bears and their supporters that just rode from San Francisco down to LA. I make silly fun logos and emblems just on the side. I was really lucky to drive over to Indiana and take a picture of this lovely cat named Bub for her book. She's pretty awesome if you don't know about her. Made album covers before and temporary tattoos and a whole bunch of stuff. And about 3 years ago, I gave my first talk where I stood in front of public people and spoke, and this is my second time, so hence the jitters. But anyway, I gave this talk where I said, you know, design is this process where you can solve challenges. And I kind of stood by it. I kind of talked about how I got to where I am, how I learned how to draw, and just some of the philosophies that I learned throughout life. I should probably mention at this point in time that I have also a couple of cancers. So when I was 25, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so everything's cool, everything's in check. But I have to go to the doctor every year and just, you know, get a scan and all that stuff. So things were good all up until this point. And I'm sitting there, I'm at my doctor's office, and they said, we need to get you an electrocardiogram. There seems to be a mass around your heart, and we're really concerned about it. So you need to do this test that you don't normally do. So there I am with this knowledge. I got the test done, and I'm waiting for results. And I'm sitting there editing the video of my talk that I gave about design is awesome and it solves all your challenges. And I'm just in this loop where I'm like, I'm feeling really like freaked out and sick and bad and not very good. And I was certain I was dying. And you know, I was listening to myself over and over, editing this video saying, design's awesome, it solves challenges. So I had to wait 6 weeks for these results. But I want to go back to that talk I gave previously, and I said, you know, how did I learn how to draw? Because I think this particular part of that story is relevant today. So this book pretty much taught me how to draw, Ed Emberley's Make a World book. And essentially it says that if you can draw these lines and these shapes, you can draw anything in the world. And essentially this book is kind of a recipe for how to do those things. You know, you can focus on the smallest of details, you build up things, you iterate, you erase, you get it right, and all of a sudden maybe you've got a pirate ship. So, as a child, I had this vocabulary for expressing things that I didn't have before. Now, this connection might actually seem tenuous, but let's file that away and go back to the moment where I'm editing that video. And I'd realized that I'd spent my entire life doing this for clients with varying degrees of success. And now I had the idea to use these skills on myself. So I decided to treat myself like a client. And just like any other project, it started by defining the problem. What is the goals? What are the things that you want to do? And that blank page is really daunting. And content is hard. And I found that with every project I've worked on, content is really, really difficult. It's the thing you just clamor for, and it's always the last thing to put in place when it's the thing you need to start designing anyway. So I also think it's the easiest part, especially when you're thinking about yourself and you're thinking about your problems or your goals. You know exactly what's wrong. It's on the tip of your tongue. I knew what was right. I knew what was wrong. The hardest part was admitting things and to commit those marks on a page. But I did, and I started to organize all my life issues by body and mind and spirit. And I started to research these chunks and understand how other people dealt with these things in the past so I could tackle them and whatnot. So there I was. Then I made it all pretty, and I designed it up into this little map. And I decided to enlist the help of professionals whenever possible. So I took my map into my therapist, and I said, here, I want to fix all this. And she regarded it. She looked at it over and over, and then she asked some questions. And it turns out, I wasn't sleeping very well. With all this anxiety of waiting for test results and kind of wondering what is it, why am I not happy or healthy? And, I'm doing all this really good work for other people, I was just kind of wrestling. And she's like, I said I was waking up in the middle of the night and I couldn't get back to bed. I'd get on the internet. I'd get angry at the internet. I don't know what's going on. So she's like, all right, we're going to just set your map aside and we're just going to focus on sleep. And that's what we did. It's kind of funny that one of the most important things you can do for yourself is absolutely nothing for 7 hours in a row. So that's what I started to do. I started to think about sleep. More than anything else, I just focused on it. So my project map grew by one box, and I started dedicating myself to this activity of doing nothing. So, the important stuff, set a schedule, work backwards from when you need to wake up and make sure you get 7 hours in. Seems pretty basic, I know. No phones or tablets in the bedroom. So that was a tough one for me because it was my night light and my alarm, but I kind of worked through it with different analog means, and I made it work. I also started an hour early before I needed to hit that mark to go to bed, where I just kind of detoxed from the day and read a book. And it can't be an exciting book. It can't be a political thriller. It had to be, books about dogs would be good, for example. So nothing that's going to get you really excited and angry. So I did this for a while, and all of a sudden I started to feel a little bit better. And also in this time, I should mention that my heart was fine. That echocardiogram, it was an anomaly. So I was fine all along, but now I was even more determined to figure out, okay, my mind made me really sick these last 6 weeks. How can I really fix it? So I doubled down on this project of fixing myself and being my own client. And I was on a roll. So I'd got sleep going on, doing pretty well on it. The next thing on that row, I was going to focus on my teeth. And I'm embarrassed to even show this, but I've got some crooked bottom teeth. So I went to an orthodontist and I said, how can we fix this? And they're like, oh, it's going to be, this many years. We can do Invisalign, all that. Oh, and it's going to be about $5,000. And I said, you know what? I think I'm going to keep that $5,000 and just floss more. So not everything on my list I found a solution for, but I did learn to let it go. The next thing that I needed to address was food. I kind of had lived like a king my entire life, just eating what I wanted. And I didn't really think too much about food. I had a really bad relationship with it. So, I just started very simple, track your diet, see what goes in, minimize the junk, and then learn to cook more. And I started with oatmeal, just a very simple thing I could do every day and start to feel better about myself. And then increasingly get more complex and try to incorporate more unprocessed foods into my life and replace the bad stuff with the good. The next part, after I was kind of sleeping well, I was eating well, was I hired a personal trainer. So that's Larry. And I know you're looking at me, you're thinking I'm doing a lot of steroids. I'm very buff and muscular. But essentially, I had gone 42 years just sedentary, clicking a mouse, and I had no physical core at all. So I went to Larry, and this is the email that I wrote him. I said, hey, I want to learn how to work out properly and safely at my age. You know, I wanted to create a plan that considered diet and pacing and all of that. I wanted to establish some tone. I don't think I'll ever be buff, but a little bit of tone would be good. I always consider myself a pear on toothpicks, so I wanted to be more of a vague rectangular shape on sturdier poles. Because I'm tall, I wanted to have better posture. Just I'm naturally inclined to duck and look down, so I wanted to work on that. And he's been really good with that. And it really, just like everything else on the list and just like that book of drawing things, is you start small. You start with that one line, and that line is just lifting a weight up 10 pounds over and over and thinking about every motion in the entire motion of that arc and being very intentional about it. So I got fit, I got better, you know, and I wouldn't say I'm completely fit, but I'm better than I was. I was able to complete a 50-mile bike ride and felt really good about that. And I know for many of you, this is all old hat. You're like, of course you should sleep, and of course you should eat good food, and you know, of course you should, you know, get a good night's sleep. But sometimes we spend so much time worrying about the project we're working on, or the rush of a deadline, or whatever external force is kind of vying for our attention, that our well-being gets pushed to the side. And I just simply needed a plan to kind of reset that. You know, I think of with all this navel gazing, this maxim of, you know, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself, or done unto you. You know, I still very much believe in this. In fact, it's a tenet in many of the religions. But I also feel that, like many things, the inverse is true, and we sometimes forget that maybe we should do unto ourselves as we do unto others. So I carried around that plan in my wallet for a long time, until where it got very tattered and torn. It got frayed and started to disintegrate. And while I don't see an end game for any one of these particular projects for my life, I do feel an extreme sense of satisfaction that I addressed underlying problems, and I created new patterns and new routines to keep things in check. And I'm finding now that I have a stronger sense of well-being, and because of that, I'm a better designer. I'm more capable and sturdy. I can take on work with renewed vigor because my physical being is better. But I also have more of a faith in the process of design than I had before, where I can lean on it, and I actually think that it's this very real thing that we can apply. So the last column is my spirit, and that's where I wanted to say no to projects that weren't very fulfilling and to work on things that were. I also wanted to learn how to dance, and I haven't done that yet, so if anybody knows of a good place. While I'm here in San Francisco, I'd like to cut the rug. So one thing that I've been doing for the last 10 years or so is I take daily photos, and I do it for fun, and it's been one of the most rewarding things I do. And recently, an organization in Cincinnati, they're called People's Liberty, they normally their head company invests in like the ballet and the opera and things like that, but they just started this program, this philanthropic lab, as an experiment to invest in people. And so they opened up a call for entries, if you will, for a fellowship where you could take a year off and have a civic sabbatical. You just had to have a program where you could help improve the community. So I submitted something with the idea of creating a project that encourages people to take more intentional photographs and to explore their neighborhoods. And I wanted to kind of combine my passion of being a tourist in your own city. And so I applied, and I was awarded the fellowship just about 3 months ago. So I'm 3 months into this year-long sabbatical, and I'm calling it PhotoCore. And I don't know exactly where this project is going. I mean, I do know that I want to cover every neighborhood in Cincinnati, and I really want to zoom in and kind of see what's happening in these places. And I want to encourage other people to participate. So I figured a bribe might be a good way to do that. So if people take photos, then they earn rewards. And I really am enjoying thinking through this right now. I just got the buttons in yesterday. And I think it's kind of neat that you can only get one of these buttons by doing something. You can't just buy it, and you have to look. And it's really, I kind of joke that the project is kind of, I don't joke, I think that the project is actually the opposite of a selfie, but it's actually looking inward and really trying to find yourself in your city. I have no idea if it's going to work, but if I just kind of lean back on that process of take some big complex idea and break it down into these small parts and just focus on those small parts, and just build on it from there. And I think that if I ever, kind of get lost along that way, I can just think as I would for a client, and just kind of have that subjective design process and apply to it and try to work through that problem. And I guess I just kind of want to close and leave my moment on the stage here and just kind of ask yourself if what's that thing you want to do, or what's that project that's kind of in the back of your mind that it's on the tip of your tongue, and what if you applied your creativity in coding or design or whatever it is that you do now, and just apply it to that thing, whether it's a hobby or on the weekends or what have you. Maybe it could grow into something that takes over your life. But I think it's a good thing, and so that's all I wanted to say.